Okay, this week I'm going to talk about Premiere mostly. In this case, I'm using CS6, but you can use any application or any version probably of Premiere. You really should be, if you want to be more of a professional videographer or in the video area of design, you really should be using a more professional application than just the iMovie or the Windows Movie Maker. I know many of you are using those programs, but in the long run, a more professional program will allow you to have more options to adjusting your videos in certain ways that would make them look a lot more professional. So in this case, I'm going to do a little slideshow video right inside of Premiere. What I have is I have some of my photos already cropped the way that I wanted to crop them. I think in a previous movie I might have talked about that. Again, I cropped this in Photoshop using 1920 by 1080 pixels. One of the things you might want to consider doing is if you're going to use the pan and zoom kind of effect or the Ken Burns effect inside of Premiere or some other application, you might want to use a little higher resolution than 72, so more dots within the image would make it a lot better when you're doing the pan. I don't remember what these are set to right now, but we will find out when we get there. If it starts looking blurry and pixelated when you're zooming in on a picture, then most likely it's not a very high resolution image. The other thing I might consider doing is getting my sound. I think those of you who have not used your iTunes yet is probably the best way. Once you start iTunes up, you might have music on a CD you want to use, or something like that. I know we'll talk about copyrighted music in the future, but right now, music from a CD is fine. Again, you could just put the CD in, and it'll ask you to import it into iTunes. Once you import it in, it'll be in your music list, but what's more important is where does it save it on your computer is what I want to talk about. So I have my music in there, and the one I want to use is the We Are All Stars for my video. I know it's probably not the best, but right now Baseball Stars is what I could think of right now. So I'm not going to import it from iTunes into Premiere, because that's not sort of how Premiere works, not like in iMovie that will take the stuff right from iTunes in. So you need to kind of find it on your computer. Probably the best way to do is to keep everything together that you're building your project in Premiere in. So I'm going to go find it. Most likely my song is in my music folder, and inside my music folder I have my iTunes folder. Inside my iTunes folder I have my iTunes Media. Inside my iTunes Media, I'll have a music folder. Inside my music folder, I'll have my Mobe is the song I want. If I open up my folder, you'll see my MP3 of the version because I had it set to MP3 when I downloaded it, so that's why it's MP3. If I copy that into my baseball folder, then it's all together. So if you're going to build a project, it's best to put everything together, all your pictures, all your video footage, all your sounds, all in one. Because how Premiere works, I'm going to start Premiere right now, is it works by linking files into the program. So whenever you import something into Premiere, it never becomes part of Premiere. It's just linking to the file on your hard drive. So if you remove the files from your hard drive, Premiere will not be able to find them, and you will have to start over. So it's best to put everything in one folder and keep everything in one folder. In fact, when I'm opening the Premiere now, I'm going to save it into the same folder that I had the pictures and the sound in. If I can get Premiere to start up here. It takes a little while. It's a pretty big application. Again, I'm using the CS6. I know there's a new version, CC, but the CS6 is fine for what I need. First thing you want to do is start with a new project. When I start with a new project, I'm going to choose where I want it to be. Down here where it says Browse, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to my World of Baseball folder, and I'm going to hit Choose. So again, down here in the first new project window, you hit Browse and go to your folder, and then you give your project a name. When I'm done choosing a name, if I hit OK, the second thing it's going to ask me is what format do I want to make my movie in. Okay, so in this case, there's a variety of different formats inside here that it talks about. Most likely, I want to use the high definition because that's where I save my files. Now, it might depend on which you like. This format that is listed right here is the video format for the certain type of video camera I have. Okay, and so there's a variety of different video cameras in there. You just need to know which one works with your video camera. In this case, you might have a digital DSLR, which is basically a picture camera that shoots video, and you got your 1080p right here. 30 frames a second is the most common for a digital disc. If you want high definition, you got your medium high definition, which is the 720, and then the old school 480 is the old television format. In this case, if I'm working with just plain pictures at high definition, I can choose, there's a plain one that says HDV right here. Since I'm working with still images, I can just use the HDV right here. If I open that up, I'm going to use the HDV 1080i30 is the one I usually use right here. It's the most generic high definition one. The downfall of it, oh well, actually no, this is probably not the best one. It's going to use the 1440 by 1080. This is an old school kind of high definition. We'll talk a little bit more about this size when we get to using a video camera. Let's see, which one do I want to use? Let's see, does it have a, let's see. I am going to use this digital DSLR. I mean, it seems to give me the settings that I want for just a still image video at high definition. In this case, if I look under the DSLR, the digital SLR settings, it's got the 1080p for progressive, which means it doesn't do the interlacing like you saw in the old school video that we watched first week, I believe it was. And then 30 frames a second, which is the standard video frames. So if I'm looking here, what I'm looking for is the frame size. Again, I'm looking at the 1920 by 1080 at square pixels. That's what this means. The frame rate is 29.97 or 30 frames a second, which is fine. Again, square pixels, because that's what I was using in Photoshop. And progressive means it's not doing the interlacing, which will give you kind of lines in your video. And then, of course, there's an audio setting at 48 kilohertz. And we really haven't talked about audio technical yet. But right now we're just learning how to do a basic slideshow. So I want you just to practice here. This one looks like it's going to work for me. So I'm going to choose the DSLR 1080 one here under the digital SLR setting. Once I hit OK, it'll open up the program, hopefully. If it does. Okay, once the program is open, again, I think I gave you an overview of how I use Premiere. Over here is where you store your pictures, down here. This is where you can edit them or adjust them. You can drag them into the timeline down here, mix it with some sound, and preview everything in this window here. So before I start, I'm going to import some pictures. Now, by default, Premiere imports your pictures to 5 seconds. If you look at the timeline here inside of Premiere, you notice you have some time that goes across the top up here. This is referring to frames or seconds. Okay, frames and seconds. So if you zoom in and zoom out, if you zoom in real quick, you'll see each one of these can be all the way down to 1 frame. This is 5 frames, 10 frames. Remember, it's 30 frames a second. So in this case, it's going to go all the way out here to 1 for 1 second. Now, by default, if you import a picture into Premiere, it's going to have them stretch out automatically to 5 seconds, which would be out to about here. So if I bring in each picture that I want to use and then I put it in the timeline, it's going to be automatically 5 seconds. Now you can adjust that time. It doesn't really matter. I'm just saying the default setting for a picture when it comes into Premiere is 5 seconds. If you want to adjust that, because maybe you want to have a whole bunch of pictures on the screen very fast, you don't want to have to go and adjust the size of them after you put it in. What tells Premiere what the frame rate is for the pictures is underneath the preference option, underneath Premiere Pro preferences. Of course, it's under Edit in Windows for that setting. Is going to be under, I believe, under General. Let's see, General. And then we have still image default duration 150 frames. Okay, so if it's 30 frames a second, 150 would be 5 seconds. So again, you can change that. I've changed that before. In fact, I've changed it before when I was doing things like animations and stuff where I want the pictures to go across the screen very fast. I might put, maybe 2 seconds, or put, 30 in there for each picture being 1 second, or 15 in there for each picture to be a half a second. So it's just up to you. I'm going to leave the 5 for right now, but I'm just pointing it at now. In addition, I'm going to import my pictures by going under File, Import. Again, I'm going to go to my desktop and find my movie, World of Baseball is what I'm looking at. I have my pictures that I want to use that are already in there. I'm using the Shift key to select all my pictures, and I'm going to hit Import. Now, Premiere is a standard video editing application. One of the things that it does have is what we call a title window. That title window is located underneath File, New, Title. After I imported my pictures, I'm going to make a title for my movie. The title window in Premiere is pretty complicated. It has a lot of settings, but you can just simply do a simple one. Once you hit New Title, you can give it a name if you want. This is Baseball. And I'm going to hit OK. This is the title window. Again, it's in the right dimension. You have all these pre-made text down here that you could use. If you like one of these down there, you can simply grab one of them. You can grab one of them. And I'm just looking for one that might work. I don't like any of these right now for what I'm doing. But, well, you can just simply click on the screen if you want. And type in your text. No, I don't know if I should put it all on one line or two. I'm going to try and squeeze it in 2 lines here. Little League Baseball. Okay, so again, this is like a normal text kind of program. You can type in text. There's the text option. You click on the screen. If I highlight the text, I can center align it. Here's a left align, center align, right align. Over here in the options, you can change the size by going to where it says font size. I can make my font size bigger or smaller. I can use the arrow tool in the upper left corner to move it around my screen so I can, center it in the screen. I have a font option over here. Things like that. So I'm just going to leave it pretty simple like that. You can go through and try all the settings, try some of these options. There's a changing of color here. You can change the background. All kinds of different settings in there. You're really going to have to go through and look at what they do. Later on I'll talk a little bit about how I use the title window in videos and over top of video. But for now I'm just putting a title in for my baseball option. So once I'm done with that, I just hit the X in the upper left corner to close it. And it shows up as one of my assets down here in the lower left corner next to where all my pictures are at. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it from here into the timeline. How I do that is I can simply drag over here into the timeline. Again, it's going to stretch it out for 5 seconds. Now here's a little cheat that I use all the time to get the picture or the title to fade in and fade out. The easiest way that I find to get something to fade in and fade out is just to apply a transition. So again, a transition is something that happens between 2 pictures or 2 video files. It'll blend from one to the other. But if you don't have anything at the beginning here, if you put a transition like the transition are located underneath the effects window. Under effects there is something called video transitions. Inside the video transitions there's one called dissolve. In the dissolve option I can simply take the plain default one, which is called cross dissolve, and I can drag it into the front of my video. And what that'll do is then it'll fade my text on. A very simple way to get your text to fade on. Put a cross dissolve at the beginning. Right here, then I can take my cross dissolve and put it at the end, and again it'll come fading on and then fading off. So a simple way without having to do too much work to get something to fade in and fade off is to put a cross dissolve at the beginning and end. I do that all the time. Very quick way of doing that. Next, you can then go and start putting your pictures in. I'm going to take my Little League Baseball and my opening picture and put that in. It's going to fade off, and boom, it's going to go right to the picture. Now, in this case, I had some videos before about using iMovie and things like that to do a video project. The downfall of using those programs is, of course, you don't have a lot of control over how things are done. Well, this program has a lot of control over how things are done. What I mean by that is, right now, if I go from my title to my picture, it's going to pop on. If I want to do what's called the Ken Burns effect, or the pan and scan, which means the window will move around, I can simply click on my picture, go to the effects control, which is usually up here in the upper left corner, and underneath that there is one that says motion in there. Okay, that motion then is a way of adjusting your picture in a variety of different ways. You can position it, you can scale it, you can rotate it, and you can do a variety of things right there, even an anchor point to get it to spin a little bit in a certain location. In addition, you have a little timeline in the effects window up here that allows you to put what we call keyframes in. So this is probably one of the hardest things about Premiere to get used to, is how to do things in the program to get what you want. So again, in the effects control, there for any image, and if you don't see your image, you might need to double click on it down here to be able to get to the effects control and then see some of these settings. You'll notice it says position. I'm going to hit that box right there. There's a little stopwatch right there, and make sure my little playhead is at the beginning. Again, this option up here is called the playhead. It shows you the preview of what you see in your video that's happening right there. So I'm going to hit a stopwatch for the position. I'm going to hit a stopwatch for the scale. And so these two I'm going to manipulate. So I know I want the video to end like this. This is full screen. What I mean by that is I want this picture to move a little bit, and I know I want it to end like this. So what I'm going to do is I put a keyframe at the very beginning. Boom, boom. Then I'm going to move my playhead a little bit further down. And maybe not that far, yeah, maybe about halfway. And then I'm going to hit this little diamond. It's kind of towards the top right here. It's add and remove keyframes. I'm going to put keyframes in there again. Boom, boom. So now I have two moments in time. I have moment at the very beginning of when my picture shows up, and kind of in the middle of when my picture, and then from the middle to the end, it's going to be full screen like you see it there. But I might want to zoom in on the kids. They're a little bit weird looking face there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my playhead and put it back to the very beginning, the first keyframes that we see here. These are two keyframes at the very beginning right there. I'm going to scale my picture up. Then I'm going to adjust my positions. Again, I'm putting my cursor above the numbers. I'm sorry, just wanted to point that out. If you put your cursors above the numbers inside of Premiere, it allows you to drag left or right to adjust the actual number. So I'm going to move it a little bit, there we go, and move it up a little bit so we can see them, kind of center them a little bit. So this picture that you see right now is going to start off with the picture of the kids, and as it goes, it's going to zoom out to where it goes full screen. So you have complete control inside of Premiere of how to adjust the actual pan and scan options of the picture. Again, these are keyframes that you can put in to do that. Again, you can adjust the timing of the picture. If I wanted it to be a little bit longer than 5 seconds, I could put my cursor along the edge of the picture in the timeline here, and then there's a zoom factor inside the timeline here. So if I'm looking at pictures inside of Premiere, there's something in the timeline or sequence down here. In the very lower left corner, there's something that allows you to see more and see less. This allows you to see more of the timeline. It's not adjusting the actual pictures, it's just adjusting the view of the timeline so you can see more content or less content. It's in the very lower left corner here, allows you to do that. If I want my picture to be on the screen a little bit longer, I can put my cursor along the left side of the still image inside the timeline, and I can stretch it a little bit further if I want it for 6 seconds or so. So again, so far what I have is I have the World of Little League Baseball show up for about 5 seconds, fades off. Then we got a picture of the kids right there. And then we're going to then go to another picture. I'm going to go inside the go inside. I'm going to adjust these a little bit more. Let's see, which picture do I want for my... this one's quite nice. Put this one in. No, maybe that's why. Again, you can make it less time or more time once it goes to that picture. If you want, you can transition. I think we talked briefly about a transition when I was fading my picture on and off. Well, this time, if you want to fade from one picture to the other, you can go under the effects window, and I can take that same cross dissolve that I was using before, and I can drag it between the two clips in the timeline, and what that'll do then is it will then fade the picture from one to the other. Very quick and easy way of doing something like that. And then simply you can grab more pictures as you're going along, maybe put a transition between those, and so on, and all the way down the timeline. I could keep putting pictures in. Let me do one more pan scan kind of thing. Let me zoom in just a little bit more here. Let me put another picture on. And again, if you want this picture to move, and you're saying, well, I don't see that picture. Well, the playhead is right here. So wherever the playhead is, and as I scrub, this is called scrubbing, when you move it across the top of your timeline. As I scrub it across the top of my timeline, I can actually see my what's happening in the video here. So if you want to do more of a pan scan kind of thing, again, if you click twice on your picture and go over to the effects control window, you'll have your motion settings that are over here. Again, I tend to use there's a little timeline here. I want to go all the way to the very beginning of my video or my picture here. So again, there's a playhead over here in the effects control. I'm going to hit the stopwatch, boom, boom, twice for position and scale. Then I tend to move it where I want it to end. What I mean by where I want it to end, usually I don't want it to pan scan the entire image. I only want it to move for maybe half of it and then stop at the very end here so that I can actually see the entire picture for a little bit of time. So I'm going to hit this little diamond right here. There's a little diamond, boom, boom. These little diamonds then will add new keyframes into the timeline. If I move it back to the very beginning, I can then adjust how I want the picture to start. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and maybe move it around. Let's see, do we want to maybe zoom out a little bit? That's pretty far zooming here. I'm going to start off kind of like this so you can see maybe move it up just a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to start it where the position is like this, and then you can see it's going to zoom out. Okay, so an easy way of zooming is these timeline. So you can go through and do all that, put some transitions in. Next thing I'm going to do is import my music. So I'm going to go under File, Import, and I did not import my music, but I did put it in my folder, I believe. We Are All Stars is here, so I'm going to import that in. Again, music you can drag into the timeline by simply taking it from here and putting it in the timeline. Once it's in the timeline, I can stretch it so it's not so long. Right now, woo, this is a very long, if you could see it, it's a very long sound. It goes all the way out there. So I don't want it to go all the way to the end there. Because if I just leave it like this, it's just going to be music, 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 music. I don't want music, music, when just black screen. So I'm going to put my cursor along the very edge of the music file, and I'm going to drag. What this is doing is changing the timing so it stops at the end of my picture. Again, there's a zoom factor right here. So we can look at what we have so far. It's probably not the best music. It's probably the worst music ever, but I just couldn't find anything else to use. I figured all the kids were stars, that's why. Doesn't really matter. You should pick some appropriate music for your pictures. I just didn't have anything right now. But again, you could just simply take it from the project window and drag it in the timeline. You can adjust the volume of your sound. Next week we'll talk a lot more about mixing sounds and doing things like that. But for right now, I just want you to make a simple one, make yourself a YouTube channel, and upload it to YouTube. So when I'm all done putting my project together to make it into a final movie, and this version of Premiere is under File, Export, Oh, you got to select your timeline window first. There we go. Make sure you have a certain timeline. You have the window you want to export first. In this case, I wanted my sequence 1 to be exported. Again, if I go under File, Export Media is how you make a movie inside of Premiere. Once I click on Media, it'll ask me what format I want. This is the window that's standard for the again for any of the video programs inside of Adobe. In this case, if I want to put it on YouTube, which I'm going to put this one on YouTube, if you look underneath format right here, the one option I want to choose is actually H.264 right here, H.264. Once I choose H.264 right here, then it's going to ask me for a preset. In this preset, I'm going to click on there. You got all these ones for Android, Apple TV, and all these. Usually, I make my videos for the YouTube and then not worry about it. Why make it for the Apple TV or the Android tablet when the people are going to view it on their iPad, or they're going to view it on their cell phone, or they're going to view it on their computer? If you make it in the YouTube format, it's then going to it'll then be able to play on any of those devices. So the YouTube format's kind of towards the bottom here. You'll notice it says YouTube. Since we're using 1080p at 29.97, if you remember the default settings that I chose at the very beginning, you can choose the same thing. Again, I'm using the YouTube HD 1080p 29.97 frame rate. And then, of course, you can give your project a name right there. So I'm going to give it a name, Baseball Premiere. Since we used a Premiere program, I'm going to put it on my desktop for now, or you can put it in your folder, World of Baseball folder. And again, the extension would be MP4 because it's an H.264. And if I hit save and export, it will then go and compress this for your YouTube channel. And then what I would do after this is upload it to YouTube and then send me a link